All right. Good morning, Savannah. This is Taraz, the host of the Savannah Business Showcase. I'm here this morning with a very special guest, Kristi Kiene. Is that right? Kristi Kiene?
Kiene, yes.
Okay. All right. Kristi Kiene of Ugly Duckling Oboes. And I also have my son in the studio, so if you hear him smacking on some strawberries, don't get mad at us. So, Kristi, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience, and we'll go from there.
All right. My name is Kristi Kiene, and I play the oboe, and I'm the owner of Ugly Duckling Oboes.
Awesome. Okay. Where are you from?
I grew up in a little town called Lorain, Ohio. It's just west of Cleveland.
Awesome. I have been. I looked up where Lorain was, so
oh my gosh.
I've been to Sandusky and Putin Bay before.
Oh, I love Sandusky.
Yeah.
We were just there. I was there with my kids a few weeks ago. We went to Cedar Point.
Also, okay. I haven't been to Cedar Point yet, but I hear it's the place to go.
It's great. Yeah.
But I get nauseous on a boat ride, so I don't know. We'll see. Okay, so what brought you down here?
Well, when I started college, my dad got a job transfer to Savannah. And so they told me that if I was going to stay in school in Ohio, that was fine, but I had to come home during the summer and work, or they weren't going to pay for my college.
Okay.
So I came during the summers, and I met my kid's dad the second summer I was down here, and then got married right out of college.
Awesome. What did you go to college for?
Music, of course.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about Ugly Duckling Oboes and how you fell in love with the oboe.
Oh my gosh, that's such a long story. Okay.
We have time.
Well, I started in school band. I played flute in 5th grade.
Okay.
And I was always very artistic and very creative as a child. Loved to draw. I did dance for a long time. I started dance when I was 4. Had aspirations to be a professional ballerina.
Okay.
And was very serious and in the dance studio, 4 nights a week and that kind of thing. And so, in 5th grade, everybody was getting ready for band, and I wanted to be in band. And my mom said, well, we'll see how it goes because you're very involved with dance. So I played flute, and at first I was really good at it, and then I was bored. And hid out in the restrooms and skipped band for a while to avoid going to band. And wanted to quit. My mom was insistent that I was not going to quit at that point because they bought the flute. And so in 8th grade, we got a new band director. And, I don't even know what made me do this, but I went to the band director and I said, well, I play oboe, so you have to get me one. So she did. And so then I had this thing that I had to figure out how it worked and how to play it. And the reeds that she got for me were plastic reeds. My band director, bless her heart, she was a trumpet player. She didn't know anything about the oboe either.
How do you play with a plastic reed?
Well, they made these reeds. I don't even know if they still make them now, but they were, it was called fiber cane.
Okay.
And they were like a synthetic wood kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And that's just what they...
But it worked. You made a sound with it and everything.
Well, I made a sound. It probably wasn't a very pleasing sound, but I did make a sound. Interestingly enough, they're coming out with synthetic reeds now that are actually quite a bit better. Saxophone and clarinet players are starting to play more on these plastic reeds. And I played on one last summer there's a couple different styles of reeds that are made. In the U.S., we make them different than they do in Europe.
Okay.
So it was a European scrape reed, but it was not bad. It was something that I wouldn't be able to play like a concert or a performance on it, but it would certainly be okay for practicing if I didn't have anything else to play on. So anyway, had this oboe that really didn't even work very well. And these plastic reeds, and I had a book and a cassette tape. I think it was called Let's Play Oboe.
Gotcha.
And I was just so determined that I was going to figure this thing out, and it sounded awful. And I can remember my mom listening to me going, you were good at flute. Why don't you just play flute? And I went, no, because I'm going to do this. I was very, very determined. And then in high school, it turned out my band director was an oboist. And so she was helpful. And it really wasn't until my junior year that I started taking lessons. And where I lived was about 10 minutes away from Oberlin Conservatory.
Okay.
So she kind of directed me towards Oberlin Conservatory, and I found a student there that taught me and just completely changed the direction of my life. I was so determined anyway, and I just didn't really know what I was doing. So I worked really hard and finally had some direction and came into contact with some really amazing people. During the time that I was there, Alex Klein was also there, and he's now the principal oboist in the Chicago Symphony.
Oh, nice.
And so he worked with me a little bit too. And I didn't really, it didn't mean anything to me at the time. I didn't really understand who he was, but at the time he had won some big concerto competitions, and I can remember that he was an amazing player, but I just didn't really know that much about it or understand who he was.
Yeah.
And he turned out to be this very famous oboist.
Yeah.
And by the time I got to my senior year in high school, I really felt like I was going to go into journalism. I love to write, still love to write.
Mm-hmm.
And I started looking at that, but then people were calling me and offering me oboe scholarships.
Really?
And
Nice.
I started thinking, well, what if I did that?
Mm-hmm.
And my teacher encouraged me to audition for the youth orchestra. And I did, and I got principal oboe in the top orchestra. And I thought, wow, if I could do this is pretty cool. I like this a lot.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. And I really didn't know that much about being a musician as a profession. I didn't really know that it was so competitive. When I was looking at colleges, a lot of people were pushing me into music ed, and I started out as a music education major, and after taking a few education classes, just really decided that being in public schools was not what I wanted to do.
Right.
And decided to pursue the performance route, and I figured, if God put that on my heart, then that's probably what I'm supposed to be doing, so I'm just going to follow this wherever it leads.
Yeah.
And so I ended up here, and I did teach private school for about 4 years. I taught at St. Peter the Apostle.
Okay.
And when my oldest son was born, I decided to go back for my master's, and I got my master's degree over at Georgia Southern. And, again, divine intervention, I ended up being able to study with Nathan Hughes, who is now on faculty at Juilliard and principal oboist in the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra.
Wow, okay.
And he's still a great friend. And it just, I studied with him for a year, and I studied with somebody else for a year who's not playing anymore. But between the two of them, I got this great education and really was able to learn a lot about the oboe and how to teach. The other thing that really has had a profound influence on my career, when I was in undergrad, my teacher was the camp director for John Mack Oboe Camp.
Okay.
John Mack was the principal oboist in the Cleveland Orchestra for 30 some odd years. And so she encouraged me to go to this camp. So I went and met John Mack and got to work with him. I have gone to that camp every year since I was 19 years old.
Nice, okay.
And John Mack passed away back in 2006. His students are still running the camp, and I'm still a part of that. I still go every year. I bring students with me when I go. But just over the course of the years from going to that, I've learned a lot, and that's really, I would say John Mack is probably the biggest influence on my teaching. Okay. And probably on my playing too.
Nice. All right, so it's kind of interesting how like all your mentors just kind of fell into your path,
They did.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah. So when did you decide to take? So I played sax all the way through high school. From middle school to high school, I played tuba and sousaphone in college. But I never thought to make it into any kind of business. So like, how did you go from becoming a great oboe player to turning into a business?
Well, musicians, there are musicians that will land an audition with a full-time job, but they're really kind of the exception. That's not what usually happens. Musicians tend to cobble together their living with several different things, and they just piece it together and really kind of just have to figure it out along the way. It's not really a planned career course.
Right.
And in this area, that's especially the case. We don't have a full-time orchestra in this area. There is not a full-time job that exists for my degree in this area.
Okay.
So I've always kind of had to piece it together, and I've always done that by playing gigs. There's some part-time orchestras around here that I've played in, and picking up students along the way. And I reached a point, I think it was about 3 years ago. I had worked for Rhodes Music for a period of time, putting together a private music lesson program for them.
Okay.
And realized in working with teachers that not all teachers taught the way that I did. And I began to realize that that was something that was a real strength for me. And I thought, well, what is the biggest thing that holds me back? And I realized that the biggest challenge that I was having was that when students got started, they were playing on instruments that didn't even work.
That's true, yeah.
And I know that happened with me. You know, when the first instrument that I played on when I first started taking lessons, it didn't work. And my teacher and Alex Klein worked on it as much as they could. And I finally got a new oboe that just completely changed things for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I started really thinking about this, I thought, well, okay, what if, you know, the music store that I worked for was just not in a position where they could really focus on getting better oboes. I mean, music stores, they rent band instruments. Oboe is a teeny tiny small part of their business. And, you know, when the crazy oboe player comes into the store making a lot of noise, they kind of want to get rid of her as fast as they can.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So I thought, well, you know, I understand I'm not the moneymaker for them. But what could I do that would help my students and, of course, you know, make a living for me too?
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to start investing in some oboes, and I found a way to do it that was cost effective and started renting them.
Okay.
And what my students have been able to do in the past 3 years has just, it's amazed me. They're so much better than they ever were.
Huh.
And I've taught private lessons as long as I've been in Savannah. But what I've seen happen with my students in the last 3 years is really amazing. And I think it's in large part because every student that I have has started on a good oboe that plays. So we haven't had to spend time up front fighting an instrument that doesn't really work.
Yeah, yeah.
And so as a result of that, I've got a student right now that's going to be auditioning for Juilliard.
Nice.
They all get into youth orchestra. They all get into honor band. I have 3 this year at the Arts Academy. I mean, they're great students.
Yeah, yeah. So how do you find your students? Or like, how do they find you, I guess?
Well, I have a little bit of a reputation.
Okay.
So there's that.
That's always good.
But, you know, the other thing, Therese, I'm not afraid to go out and hustle. And I will go out and talk to band directors and hand out flyers and follow up and send emails. And, you know, I do have some sales experience. So I learned how to sell and how to go hustle. And so this is... Honestly, this time of year is hustle time for me. I'm out talking to band directors to find out where the oboe players are. Yeah,
that's pretty cool. So, how many schools are around here? I mean, I know we have Richmond Hill High because we're right here in Richmond Hill, but like, how many other schools? Because I'm new here.
Well, I draw a lot from Savannah. I don't just teach in Richmond Hill. I do have a student that's. I've had her since 6th grade, but she's going to be a freshman at Richmond Hill this year.
Okay.
I've got 3 at the Arts Academy.
Okay.
How many schools there are and how many have oboe players that I can draw from are 2 different things. So I don't have a number of schools. I have a target list.
Got you.
Right. I know that they've got band programs that will support what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. Because that's the other thing to keep in mind, too. If they don't have a halfway decent band program, then I'm going to produce these kids that are light years ahead of everybody else, and they're going to sit in that band classroom, and they're going to be bored, and they're not going to stick with it. So I do have certain schools that I target.
Gotcha.
And this year, since I'm living in Richmond Hill now, I'm also targeting Liberty County and Hinesville more than I have in the past.
Gotcha. Makes a lot of sense. Okay, so another thing you do is you make reeds.
I do.
Correct? Yeah. So
yes.
Another thing that I just never thought about as a saxophone player, I would just struggle with broken reeds all the time. So like, what's the process for making a reed?
So, oboists have this reputation for being sort of OCD and neurotic and crazy, and it's probably because of the reeds. I heard John Mack say to a class one time, "The oboe is your friend. The reed is a fickle lover." The oboe will be faithful and loyal to you for many, many years to come.
Yeah.
The reed may decide in the middle of a performance that it would like to have a trial separation. It's all very true. So oboists make their own reeds.
Okay.
At any given time, I have a reed case that holds 12 reeds. It's usually full. And then I have blanks, which are reeds that have been tied on but not yet scraped, that sit on my desk that I can grab one and finish it really quickly if I need to.
Gotcha.
So I actually buy cane in bulk. The cane is a type of bamboo. The plant name is Arundo donax. that cane will grow here. However, what grows here is not suitable for making reeds because our climate here is very humid and very moist. And so the Arundo Donax that grows in this area, it's like a sponge. It won't vibrate. You can't do anything with it. So I think the cane I'm using right now comes from France. And the cane is, I've heard that a good year for wine is a good year for cane. Mm-hmm. And the cane will usually grow kind of in the boggy areas where there's runoff from the grapes that they grow for wine.
Gotcha.
And so France is probably the primary source, but I've also bought cane recently from Argentina and from China also. And it sort of all depends. Over the years, I've developed a network of other oboists, and if I want to try something new, I'll kind of reach out and say, "Hey, where are you getting cane?" Yeah. It's almost like we're drug dealers. And I buy it in bulk by the pound. Yeah. And I split it. I've got a machine that I gouge it on and gouge out the center, and then it has to be shaped and then tied onto a little cork tube, and then scraped down. So I learned to make reeds. I started learning when I was in high school, when I was studying with the student at Oberlin Conservatory, and it's something that I've worked on my entire adult life. Mm-hmm. At this point, I make it look deceptively easy. Mm-hmm. My students and parents, after they realized how much reeds cost, they're going, my daughter needs to learn how to make reeds so that we don't have to spend so much money on reeds. And I'm thinking, well, I can teach them how to make reeds, but it's going to be a while before you're going to save any money on it. It really is a process. I have a student that is going off to college right now at Emory. Okay. And she's pretty good at making reeds. And I think she started learning when she was a freshman, I believe. And she's to the point where there have been a couple times where I haven't been in town and another student needed a reed and they can reach out to her and get a reed from her. So I think probably 3 or 4 years into it was when she really started to become proficient enough at making them that she could do that. So it is a process.
Yeah, I bet. It sounds like a process. I couldn't even wrap my mind around it that much. So I guess the next question is, so business isn't easy, and I don't ask a lot of people this, but you seem like you've been fairly successful with it, so I'm going to ask you this question. So like, what has been a major, like what's been a failure in your business, or what's been a major struggle? And then that way I'll ask you your success after.
It's always finding work. Yeah. I mean, you never know. You only have so much control over how much work you get. And in a place like Savannah, I would love to play more than I play, but we have a part-time orchestra here, and I don't even play in that orchestra anymore. I have a quintet that I play in, and I play in Savannah Winds, and then there's church gigs, but it's certainly not anything that you can bank on and really live off of as far as the gigs go. Yeah. So I do rely on students a lot for that. And, that's the hard thing is that, you can have a studio full of students and then all of a sudden you've got one that they have a life circumstance that happens and they quit, and then you've got to figure out how to make up that income. Yeah. And so it's constantly having to go out there and figure out how you're going to do it. So it's like I said to you earlier, we sort of cobble together our living as a musician. The other thing that is challenging for me is at this point, because my students are advanced, they usually go off for summer study during the summer. And then during the summer, I have to figure out how I'm going to make up the income because my students were good enough that they wanted to go somewhere else. Gotcha. Yeah. So I've always got to figure that out. Yeah.
Kind of catch-22.
It is.
Yeah. Without a doubt.
The bad thing about being a good teacher is you eventually make yourself obsolete.
That's true. That's true. Okay, so what's been a major success for you then? Like, what do you really enjoy about the job? And
I love seeing my students be successful. I get such a big kick out of that. And I had a couple of instances this summer where my students went away to a camp and they came back and they ended up getting first chair in the top group at whatever camp they were in, and studying with a really great teacher that they felt like the teacher could really dig in with them because they already knew so much. And I guess I like having my teaching validated like that.
So do you consider yourself a teacher, or do you consider yourself an entrepreneur? I wonder.
Yes.
Both.
Yes, I would say all of the above. It's one of the things that I think is really, really important that is starting to be taught, but it wasn't taught when I went to college. I know New England Conservatory offers a entrepreneurial musicianship program.
Okay. Wow.
And there's a couple of other places that are starting to do that. And there's some books that are starting to be written about it. And I think it's really important that if you're going to be a music major, you need to be taught how to build your business.
Yeah.
Because most people who are music majors are not going to go out and win a major orchestra job. And even if you do, those orchestras are not always stable, and you may not get to keep your job for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really important that musicians have to be entrepreneurial. And I didn't realize that early in my career. I've realized through several other things that I've done, I've learned those skills and learned how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think probably one of the most important things that taught me that is I was involved in a direct sales company.
Okay.
And received a lot of training through that. And that's how I really kind of put two and two together
mm-hmm.
and learned how to market myself as a musician and realized that those skills were something that I really needed.
Yeah. Yeah, that's impressive. You were able to, and it's cool that you're able to, take those skills and apply it to this. So direct sales. How did you get involved in that?
Well, oh gosh, I have to think. It was about 2009. What was that? 8 years ago. I had, we were in the middle of that recession, and I had been teaching college, and the college has cut back on part-time faculty, so I didn't have any college gigs. And I was trying to find a job, and there were no jobs.
Yeah.
And I had lost most of my students because of the recession,
mm-hmm.
and I just needed a way to make money. And so a friend of mine from college, I kept posting on Facebook that I needed a job, and a friend of mine on college reached out to me and asked me if I would be interested in looking at Mary Kay.
Okay.
And so at first I said, I'm not going to go peddle makeup. And another friend of mine said, Mary Kay is a good company, and you should look at that. And it might actually be a good experience for you. So I thought, well, I have very limited options, so maybe I should give this a try. So I did. I sold Mary Kay for about 8 years. And then recently I switched over to a different direct sales company called Isogenics. It's health and wellness.
Okay.
And there were several reasons I made the switch, but a lot of it is that what I'm doing now is truly home-based
mm-hmm.
and internet-based. It doesn't involve running around and going and doing parties. And the problem that I was having in Mary Kay was that if I was out doing parties, it didn't give me time for my students and time to practice.
Right.
And I really needed that time.
Yeah.
So this works out better.
Awesome.
So.
Yeah. So where do you think you get your hustle from? Because it's not something you learned. You don't really learn to hustle. You're born with it in some ways.
Well, my dad was in sales.
Okay.
And when I was growing up, he traveled quite a bit, and I loved riding with him because it was good quality time with Dad. And he always listened to Zig Ziglar in the car.
Yeah, that's where it's at. Okay.
And so I think it stuck.
Yeah, I love Zig Ziglar.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah. Okay. What is a couple more questions, then we'll round off. So what do you want people to know about Ugly Duckling Oboes before we go to break?
Okay. Well, first of all, I think that one of the things that I hear a lot is that kids will start in band and parents don't want to really invest in lessons because they think, well, let me see if they like band before I invest in lessons. Totally wrong way to go about it. Because then what happens is that they get in there, they don't really know what they're doing, and they're frustrated and they give up. Whereas if they started out with lessons, and they have all the tools in front of them right off the bat to be successful, and their chances of success are much greater. I have a very high rate of attrition with students that start out in lessons when they're in 6th grade. Most of this, I think all of the high school students I have now, all except for one, started with me when they were in 6th grade. So they've never had an oboe in their hand when I wasn't there to help them with it. And I think that when parents look at who's getting in the honor bands, who's getting scholarships, who's getting the top seats in the youth orchestra, those are students that started out with lessons in 6th grade. Those are students whose parents didn't say, let me wait and see if they like it first.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think I had lessons in 5th grade with sax, and I did stay with it for a long time.
Exactly.
Because of that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, well, thank you, Kristi. We will go to break. We'll be back in just a second, and we'll put Kristi through the lightning round. All right, see you guys in a minute. And we're back. The Savannah Business Showcase. Thank you guys for joining us again. Once again, I'm here with Kristi Kiene of Ugly Duckling Oboes here in Richmond Hill, Georgia. All right, and we're going to do the lightning round.
All right.
Ready?
Yes.
Okay. First question. What did you want to be as a kid, and how does that relate to your current business?
I wanted to be a ballerina. Told you I've always been artistic, so I'm kind of glad that I went into music and not dance, because ballerinas age out fairly young and musicians stick around for a little while.
That's true. How have you approached failure in life?
It's a learning experience. I've certainly experienced a lot of failures and setbacks, and I try to look at them as, okay, so what do I need to do to correct forward on this?
Mm-hmm. Who influenced you early in life, and who's your mentor now?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think probably early in life, my dad was a huge influence on me, because he was in sales, and I watched him. My dad was the air traffic controller. He got fired back in the 80s, and so he had this family to support, and he just picked it up and went out and hustled and made it happen. And that experience has always stuck with me.
Do you have kids? And you do. But what did you teach your children? What are you going to teach your children about entrepreneurship?
Well, I have 3 children, and they have watched me. We talk a lot about what I do, and their dad is a band director, so he has more of a traditional job, and I'm more entrepreneurial, so I don't. And I hope that they watch and they learn how to pursue their dreams and how to follow their dreams. And I'm a big believer in entrepreneurship. I think that if you have a dream, you follow it. I've seen people say, well, you go to college, you get a degree so you can get a job and have benefits. And I think our economy is not really going that way anymore. Mm-hmm. It's better suited towards people who will go out and chase a dream and do whatever it takes. And so I hope my kids will learn that from me.
What have you had to sacrifice in order to start your business?
Oh my gosh. Well, when you start a business, I don't know of anybody who starts a business and has lots and lots of money.
Yeah, that's true.
And so there's been a lot of times that I don't have time and I don't have money, because all of my time and money is going towards a business. Mm-hmm. And so there's certainly been things that I wanted to do for me and for my children that we haven't been able to do because of that.
What's the one thing that in your business that drains you of energy, and what's the one thing that excites you?
Negative people drain me of energy. It's an easy one. I'm a pretty positive person. I do not respond well to negativity. I don't respond well to students who make a lot of excuses and whine and that sort of thing, and they know it. Mm-hmm. And I don't tolerate it. Yeah. What excites me is watching my students be successful.
What is something that you consume religiously? It could be a blog, TV show, or food, or anything.
Well, my isogenic shakes. I'm not a TV watcher.
Yeah, okay, all right.
And then I do read a lot, though.
Okay. So next question. What's your favorite book?
Oh, my goodness. Favorite book. I can only pick one?
Well, two. Top 2 books.
Okay, well, definitely on my list is John Maxwell's 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. Wow, I have to think about that. I'm in the middle of reading Ron Chernow's biography of Hamilton, and that it's very inspiring to me. So we'll just go with those 2.
Okay. All right. What's something most people don't know about you?
Oh my gosh. Well, everybody knows that I play the oboe.
Everybody knows you play the yep.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, I just started teaching English classes to Chinese students online.
Yes. All right.
So that's a new one. Most people probably don't know that.
Do you have any interests or hobbies that most people would consider weird?
Well, I play the oboe. So other than that, I do yoga, that's pretty mainstream these days.
Mainstream now, yeah.
I love roller coasters.
Okay.
Total adrenaline junkie.
Okay. I would consider that weird.
Okay.
Have you ever had something happen to you that you thought was bad, but it turned out to be for the best?
Absolutely. I mentioned that I had been in Mary Kay for 8 years. I was very successful. I actually earned a car with Mary Kay.
Nice.
And things went really well. And I don't want to go into a lot of detail about it, but corporate kind of pulled the rug out from under me.
Mm.
And at the time, it just absolutely broke my heart.
Mm.
But it turned out to be a really good thing because it made me look at other opportunities, and the opportunity that I'm involved with now has given me a lot of my time back.
Mm. What do you miss most about being a kid?
Not having any responsibility.
What's something you learned last week? Within the last week.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I went to this amazing workshop in Atlanta with a business coach named Jeffrey Combs. Mm. And oh my goodness, I wish I had my notes in front of me because I learned so much from him. Mm. But he was the one that actually said to me, he didn't know what an oboe was, and I thought that was the craziest thing ever. And I said, you're going to try and sell me on business coaching and you don't know what I play, really? But he said that I needed to do a Facebook Live video, so I did. And it's actually, it has gotten a lot of traffic. And I have never done a Facebook Live video prior to that, so it really kind of forced me into stepping out of my comfort zone. It was interesting because I'm one of those people that I don't do comfort zone. I want to be outside of the comfort zone because I know that's where life gets good.
Yeah.
And so when somebody tries to tell me you need to step out of your comfort zone, I'm like, okay, look who you're talking to. I'm way outside of my comfort zone and everybody else's. So, throw something at me and I'll tell you if I won't do it. And that was one of them. I had never done a Facebook Live video. I think I was probably a little self-conscious. Mm. And he said, go do it. And I went, okay, fine. And I did.
Yeah.
So definitely learning experience. It wasn't as scary as I thought it would be.
Mm. And during the break, you told me how successful Facebook has been for you. So do you have any tips or advice for people out there?
Stay positive on Facebook.
Okay.
The people that I hear say, oh, I stay off of Facebook because of all the negativity. I have unfollowed people that post negative things on Facebook. I won't unfriend them. Because I understand that, maybe they're going through something and they feel like they need to express that. But stay positive on Facebook because a lot of people do that on their free time. And what do you want to put out in the world?
Yeah. What story does your family always tell about you?
Oh, my gosh. Oh, my dad loves to tell the story of how I got my car taken away when I was 16. I think, probably like most teenagers, I really enjoyed having the freedom of having a car and my driver's license. And I had a boyfriend in high school that I was very good friends with his dad and his grandfather. His grandfather owned an auto parts store, and I stopped in to say hi to him and ended up chatting with him for a very long time. Of course, there were no cell phones back then. So I couldn't really tell my parents where I was, and they finally called up there on the offhand chance that I might have stopped there, and I was. And I got home, and they grounded me. They took my car away. And I had to find, and it wasn't just like, you can't go to your friend's house. It was like, give me the keys, and you can walk to school and figure out how to get where you want to get for the next week.
Wow, okay.
And that included oboe lessons. So I had to pay one of my friends to take me to my oboe lesson that week. So, yeah, my dad loves telling that story.
All right. So there's a concept. I ask all the guests this. Concept of the Pareto's principle, the 80-20 rule.
Of course.
Yeah, 20% of your actions equal 80% of your results. So what's the 20% in your business that gets you 80% of the results?
Well, at the time of year where I go out and talk to a lot of band directors, and honestly, I only have room in my studio for 4 more students, but I'm talking to way more band directors than that.
Yeah.
So, because that's, I know that 20% of the band directors that I talk to are going to be where my students come from.
Do you feel that your business is your life's calling?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What about it? Or, like, why?
Well, when if you would have told me even as a freshman or sophomore in high school that I was going to be a musician, I would have went, absolutely not. I'm trying to get out of this. My mom won't let me quit. It was not what I wanted to do. But I think the way that things have fallen into place, the mentors that have been put in my life, and, I've taught for over 20 years. And when I look at the students that I've taught and where they are and what they've done, and know that I was a part of that, absolutely think it was my calling.
Is there a quote that's always been a mantra that you live by?
Oh, yes. Come home with your shielder on it.
Okay.
Something John Mack used to say.
All right. Well, I heard it in 300. But so like, what does that mean to you?
It means that you get out there and you give it all you've got, unless you're dead.
Right. Do you consider yourself an introvert or extrovert, and why?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I've always thought I was more of an extrovert, but at the same time, I really do value my alone time as well. I'm pretty good around people, and I enjoy being around people, but I need to have some time to myself to decompress too.
Yeah, definitely. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. Let me think about this for a minute. I'm going to be like totally off the cuff right now and say New Zealand, but if you ask me like in a week, I might change my mind about that. So yeah, we'll go with that.
Okay. Couple more questions. Maybe I'll give you some more time because we're running early. If you had a superpower or ability, what would you choose and why?
I think I would have the ability to make everybody think positively. It bothers me when I see negativity. It really it's almost painful.
Yeah, it's not really. Yeah, that's how I try to live too, right? Because you don't need it.
I just want everybody to be happy and positive. And, it's not that, I have bad things happen to me in bad days too, but, I'll usually cry for a minute and then go find something to do to make me happy. Practice oboe, go to a wine tasting, read a book, something, just to, because I don't want to waste my life that way.
Advice for entrepreneurial kids and their parents.
Well, for parents, I would say just be supportive and be encouraging. Don't be controlling. Realize that if you have a child that feels called towards being an entrepreneur, they'll find their way. And, for kids, I would say start young and find a good mentor.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So how do you find mentors? Because that's kind of the hard part a lot of times.
Oh, you asked me about this, and I don't think I really answered it. I've had several different mentors.
Yeah.
And I look for people who are where I want to be, sort of. For many years, I would have said that, my teachers, my oboe teachers were my mentors, John Mack for sure. And then, some of the other teachers I had as well. And I still have some colleagues that I consult with pretty regularly that are have great jobs and successful careers in oboe, but I don't find that they're necessarily my life mentors so much anymore the way that they used to be. I mentioned to you that I changed to a different network marketing company in Isogenics, and so my mentor in that, her name is Carla.
Okay.
And she's amazing. She's absolutely amazing. And it was kind of funny. I found her when I was out working Mary Kay. I was in a coffee shop, and she just had this light about her. And we've been friends ever since then. And I think what has impressed me the most about her lately, she has a 5-year-old daughter that was recently diagnosed with leukemia. And so it's been very, very challenging time for her and her family. And she has remained positive. She has always been there for me and for the other people that are on her team. And I've always been able to reach out to her and ask her questions, and she's always there to help. And even when her daughter was first diagnosed and things were a little crazy for her family, there were other leaders on her team that she developed that, since I was new, she could say to me, this is your go-to person for now. I'm still here, but if you need something immediately, go to her. And I was impressed that she was such a leader, that she had developed these leaders, because, true leaders, they don't develop followers, they develop more leaders.
Right.
And so she truly, truly is the epitome of that. And so I would say she's definitely one of my mentors for me right now, and somebody that I go to on a pretty regular basis for advice.
Yeah. That's amazing. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to round off.
All right.
And what else? Is there anything I left out that you want people to know, or? I think we covered everything.
I think we covered it. I can't think of anything.
All right. Well, thank you, Kristi, for joining us. How can people find you?
You can find me on Facebook. If you want to like my Facebook page, it is Ugly Duckling Oboes. I do have a website, and it's just uglyducklingoboes.com. But if you go to my Facebook page, all the information is there.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys for listening. You can find it once again at Ugly Duckling Oboes, either on Facebook or on our website. So check out Kristi. And I'll see you guys next week, or Wednesday. This will come out on Monday, so I'll see you guys on Wednesday in the week. But you have the rest of the week ahead of you. So take some time out and go help somebody. Go do something important. Go do something impactful in your community, in your church, with your family. Just go do something good this week. All right, guys. Talk to you next week.